Dr. Troy Podell, the Coordinator of Career Readiness for the Downingtown Area School District, and welcome to this edition of the Career Cafe. We have a very special guest with us here today, Miss Cori Leary. Cori is a DHS West alum, is the president of the local chapter of the Society for Human Resource Management.
Yes.
And is the Human Resources Director for Barclay Friends Senior Living.
Yes.
Got them all.
Got them all.
Cori, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Cori, I want to take you back on a trip down memory lane a little bit, okay? You're in class at West, you're a whippet. What are you thinking as you walk across the stage and receive your diploma for high school, in terms of where you're headed and what you're going to do, and can you take us sort of through that narrative from there to where you are professionally?
Okay, sure. Well, actually, when I graduated, I decided to go to Penn State University. I was actually planning on going into public relations and working at a magazine in New York City, so that was my original plan. What ended up happening was I kind of rethought, as I was in college for a year, I was kind of starting to realize, hey, I'm growing up. I need to really think about what kind of life that I want coming out of school. Do I want the long hours that it might take, or do I want to live in the city, or would I rather have more of a 9-to-5 type job? So as I kind of rethought that, I was like, maybe I might want to go a different direction. So I ended up actually switching gears, and I wanted to become a guidance counselor. Ultimately, I was taking psychology classes, and I ended up taking an industrial organizational psychology class, which is more geared toward psychology in the workplace. And I found that I really, really liked that class. So from there, mixing both that psychology background and the public relations background, I chose human resources because I felt like they kind of were a good mix to put me into place as an HR professional. So once I got out of college, I got both degrees, psychology and public relations. I went immediately into a human resources assistant role. And from there, I also started to go get my master's degree because at that point I didn't have an actual degree in HR. And I felt like I needed that in order to be successful in this career and, climb my way up the ladder. So you, if I'm hearing you correctly, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm a huge IO psych person too. Yes.
My best friend in the world is a PhD in it, and my EDD dissertation study was an IO psych study. Great. You took this background of some things that you were interested in and that you had studied.
Yes.
You married them together and found something that was a good fit, and then, as a professional, pursued a professional degree in that particular focus.
Yes, that is correct. So, I think when I was in high school, there was this pressure to kind of pick your career right away. And I found that it's a little bit more malleable than that. Just because you are on one path at one point doesn't mean that's necessarily where you have to be. And you may change your mind a few times and you can still be successful. So I went into HR, I got my degree. I went to Villanova University, got the master's in human resource development. And I also decided to join our local HR association, Chester County Human Resource Association. Joined as a member, and then I also joined as a board member to kind of get more involved and to network and to kind of get my name out there, meet more people, because often it's about who you know, truly it can be. Who you know can help open doors for you that may not have been possible if you weren't out there networking. So at that point, I'd been at my HR assistant job for a year, decided I wanted a job with a little bit more responsibility. I felt like I was excelling at what I was doing and needed more of a challenge. And I ended up at Barclay Friends, which is where I'm at now. And it's funny because the way that I got that role is I did apply for the job. I actually went to the next CCHRA meeting, the HR Association meeting, and sat at a table with random people, struck up a conversation, and was actually sitting next to the current HR director at that time. And we got to talking and found out that I applied for your job, and she actually told me later on that she had actually put my resume in the no pile because she didn't feel like I had enough experience. But just by me being there and speaking with her and showing my professionalism, she called me in for an interview the very next day, and within a week I had the job.
That's such a valuable story for our students to hear, Cori, that shaking hands and meeting people in the eye and just striking up conversation can really help open doors.
Yeah, it really can. Just getting yourself out there a little bit. And I've always been a little bit more on the shy side, a little bit more of an introvert. And so that was at first very challenging for me. But then once you keep doing it and you get more comfortable, you get more confidence in yourself, and then you're fine. Now it's easy going to the meetings and talking. And now I'm the president, so I get up in front of the whole group and speak. So it's been very valuable for me to be a part of that association.
I was about to say, as somebody that has attended CCHRA meetings and seen you speak in front of the group, I would have never pegged you as an introvert. So it also speaks to the value of these professional organizations that you have this opportunity to professionally develop and grow and become an expert public speaker. It's really quite terrific.
Yep.
Cori, talk to me a little bit about your current role as an HR director and what that's like, particularly at Barclay Friends.
Yep, so currently I'm the HR director. When I started at Barclay Friends about 5.5 years ago, I was in a lower level role, the HR payroll representative. From there, I was in that position for about 2.5 years. And then my boss left, and at that point in time, I wanted to pursue her role. I felt like I was ready. I applied. And I was actually told by my boss at that time that they didn't feel like I was ready and weren't going to even interview me at that point. And so I was very upset about that, very upset. But what I did was, I felt like I deserved a shot. And I got up the courage to go in, have a meeting one-on-one with the executive director, and pretty much lay out all the reasons why I deserved to be given a shot at the position. So I went in prepared, had everything written out, went in, talked to her, gave her all the reasons why I should be considered for that role. Even though I was young, still kind of green, I felt like I could do it. And so I actually, 10 minutes later after I left her office, she came to me and told me that they were going to give me basically a 6-month tryout.
Wow.
For the job. They weren't even going to look for anybody else. They were just going to give it to me, see how I did, and from there they would decide whether or not I'd stay in the job. 4 months later, they offered me the job. They felt like they didn't even need the 6 months, which was great. But I felt like that was very important for my development as well, just to get that out there, and I think it's important for these students to know that sometimes you have to have that confidence in yourself, and don't be afraid to ask what you want. Ask for what you want and go after it, go prepared, and be good with that.
It's so valuable what you've done there. Speaking to the value across your career of tenacity, but also your willingness to advocate for yourself.
Yes.
As the father of a young girl, I try to instill in her this desire to advance, certainly, but also to self-advocate. And the only way that we're going to squash this pay gap between men and women in our society is a combination of consciousness raising as well as self-advocacy.
Yes. And I feel like that's helped me in the role now. So I've been in the role for about 2.5 years. Barclay Friends, for the students that don't know, it's a long-term care community. We care for very old and very sick people. It's mostly skilled nursing at this point, but we're also going to be opening up an assisted living building within the next year or so, which is still elderly people, but they don't need quite as much care.
I was about to say, it moves you further along
Yes.
in terms of the spectrum of care.
Exactly. But for me, my role is Human Resources Director. So I'm in the administration office. So what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is, recruitment, hiring, employee relations. So, talking to employees if they have issues, working through things, investigations into issues. Also doing things like fun events for employees. We had the Philly Fanatic in last year. Employees loved that. So kind of, yeah. So some of those fun things to make work better for our employees. Also, things like discipline, terminations. But that's not all of what I do. I know a lot of people think HR and immediately think, oh, the police person of the organization, the person walking around trying to terminate everyone. But that's a very small amount of what I do. And in fact, we're a Quaker-based organization, so we have very high values, and so that makes us a great employer because we actually care about our residents, but we also really care about our staff. So we try as hard as we can to make people successful in their roles, and we have a wide variety of roles for everything from housekeepers, wait staff, and certified nursing assistants to registered nurses, marketing, accounting, finance.
It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a whole business. It's a living and breathing business, 24/7. And I think a lot of times, kids in high school, I know I didn't know much about long-term care when I was younger, and I had no idea that there were all these different types of positions that you could go into. I thought maybe it would just be nurses. And that's what you think of, nurses in healthcare. But there's so much more than that. And it's a really booming field at this point because 10,000 people every single day turn 65. And that's about the point where people need this type of care. So there's excellent job security, that's for sure, which is great.
I have a friend who's in the long-term care insurance business, and he highlighted to me some years ago, about a decade ago, that other than whole life insurance policies where you have a 100% likelihood to exercise the policy, long-term care insurance is the most likely to exercise policy in insurance, right? And we've way undercapitalized it as a society.
Yes.
Can you speak to sort of how someone enters our long-term care insurance in the United States?
So do you mean entering into a role in long-term care?
I meant more sort of along the lines of why someone accesses long-term care. What are the circumstances that precipitate that?
So typically, there's a spectrum of long-term care. So it goes all the way from independent living to skilled nursing and hospice. Independent living is, really just you're reaching, over 55, 55 to 70 typically, where you're still able to independently live on your own. You don't need much care other than maybe somebody to shovel your driveway. And a lot of that kind of stuff is people still live in little cottages, just in a community where they can have certain amenities. But from there, it kind of goes and creeps down the line, because as someone gets older, they may need somebody to help them, give them medication, or maybe they might have a condition where they need somebody to check on them every so often because something may happen to them. And then you get to the personal care side of it where, people are starting to develop dementia and can't quite remember things as well as they can. And that can often be very stressful for people. People can get very sad about that, which makes it even worse and can make the disease progress. And so the purpose of the long-term care is so that people can get continuous care that's tailored to them, They can have people there all the time. That's not just their family, because it can also be a burden on families. But it allows those people to get the care they need, and while still keeping their dignity as a human being. And what we do, we have a lot of skilled nursing right now, and skilled nursing is towards the end, right before hospice, and a lot of the people that we serve, they need help eating. They can't do that on their own. They can't get dressed on their own. They need help going to the bathroom. But some of them are still great with their mind. They're aware of where they are. They still watch their old movies and everything, those black and white movies. But they just need that extra level of care because they're no longer as mobile as they used to be.
Right. So if it's not the mind betraying them, it's their body.
Yeah. And we do have people that have both, that can hardly move and can hardly talk. But you know what? You can still see that whenever they see the nurses that care for them every day, they still have that smile on their face because they're happy. And that's what we strive to do, is we strive to make a difference in the lives of these people every single day, because we're basically all they have towards the end. Their family comes in, but we're with them 24/7, making them feel like they're still cared for and still loved. And that's the purpose of what we do.
So I have a few HR-specific questions.
Yep.
And
Go
as a
ahead.
fellow IO-Psych person, I think you'll
Yes.
appreciate this, because my dissertation research focused on the role that the alignment of organizational goals and values and that of an employee plays in their likelihood to turnover. Right?
Yes.
And it makes sense on some intrinsic level that, like, if you're a vegan, working at Dietz and Watson is probably not going to be for you.
No. Yeah.
But you would open the door and mentioned the Quaker-based values of the organization. Can you speak to that as an employee and what that means to you?
So the Quaker values are simplicity and community and stewardship and teamwork, all those types of things, integrity. And to be quite honest, the first business that I was in, it was a for-profit corporate type atmosphere, and I often felt like the bottom line was a little bit more important than the people and the product. And I'm not saying that every for-profit corporate organization is like that, but
Sure.
there wasn't that distinct set of values to work and live by there. When I came to Barclay Friends, I was very much attracted to the fact that it seemed like a family atmosphere. Everybody treated everyone else with respect. We had these values that were taught on the very first day. That's the very first thing that our new employees learn at orientation. They learn what the Quaker values are. And they get to actually meet a Quaker, because we do have a Quaker, a practicing Quaker on staff right now who's been there for 30 years. Yeah, I can't even imagine. But and you can tell how much she means what she says when she's talking about that. And we remind our staff of that all the time, and we try to live by it. And as an employee myself, it's just a good feeling knowing that you're working for an organization that kind of puts these guidelines in place and has these expectations. No matter how much money we're making or what we're doing, those are the things that we need to live by, and we do. And so it just makes work life just more comfortable. You feel safer, and you just feel more like a team, a group.
And it's like a mutual community of support
Yes.
in the office as part of a community of support for your residents.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing. Let me ask you how then, as an HR director, those values manifest themselves in terms of your recruitment process and your hiring process. Because you mentioned that it's a piece of onboarding, but like when you're out there interfacing with potential employees, how does that work?
Well, so when we are going out and recruiting, we make sure that we mention that we have that value set, and that we're looking for people that match those values and will fit into the culture of the group. So, when we're interviewing, we definitely ask questions to kind of gauge whether or not they are within that culture.
Right.
So a lot of it is kind of seeing what they've done in the past, what kind of things they've done, what they like to do outside of work, how they react when we tell them about the values, because that often can be very telling as well. And you kind of get a feeling. And when we're interviewing, especially, that's when we try to kind of determine whether or not this person is someone with integrity, honesty, and whether or not they would be happy in an atmosphere like that.
Right, because you never want to, and it segues into my next question, you never want to hire somebody to fire them, right? You want to make sure that there's a fit. Right?
Exactly.
I've worked for various organizations executing certain HR roles, and unfortunately one of them has been employee termination, right? Yes. When it doesn't work out, or the values weren't quite aligned, or somebody makes a mistake or a decision that indicates that they don't want to be with us anymore, and haven't executed that, right? And haven't said like, well, sorry guys, I'm out. But by the merit of their decision, that's what they're saying.
Yes.
If you follow. So some of those are wild and worthy of a great anecdote, and others are very serious, and they kind of stick with you, and there's a bit of regret. And I'm curious if you could reflect on perhaps your most memorable employee severance experience, something that, not a big part of our job, it certainly is.
Yeah, and what we see is that we often terminate for just a few reasons. So, either they don't show up to work, which we get a lot. You can't be late and you can't call off of work all the time, which is something that we've seen an uptick in, and we try to stop. Also, for very serious allegations or things that they do, because we are working with the elderly, so abuse sometimes comes up, and that obviously does not fit our values, and it's against the law, and it's against both employee and resident safety. So that happens sometimes, and then there's those people that just are not a good fit. They're the way they speak to people, the way they handle themselves, the way they treat others, it's not going to work.
And they're not responding to coaching.
And there was one person in particular that we did have to terminate. This was actually a higher level position that when it happened, and we tried for a long time to help this person, but he or she was a very unprofessional person overall, just barking orders at people, not listening when being spoken to, kind of going off and doing whatever he or she wanted, speaking on their cell phone during meetings, just all sorts of crazy stuff. And for me, I knew that this person wasn't a bad person. It was just not a leadership style that we wanted to have. I mean, it was rubbing off on their middle managers below them and their employees, and the employees felt like they were being disrespected and that this person didn't have their best interests at heart. And we tried coaching this person for about a year. I mean, we tried. We sent him or her to trainings. They met with me one-on-one to talk about it. They got written up sometimes for it, which sometimes we need to use as a tool. And ultimately, we just had to part ways. And I'd say that was probably one of the hardest terminations that I've had to do, because I knew that this person was not a bad person. And part of me didn't think that this person was doing it on purpose. I think they just did not understand our culture and didn't understand that they had to come to work and be fully engaged in work and do their job and treat people with respect. And that was a tough one, because I had worked closely with this person, and we just finally had to say, we don't think this is a right fit. Right. So it wasn't quite as black and white of a situation as abuse, where obviously we are going to terminate that person because of safety reasons. This was more of a cultural fit one, and that's usually tougher for me.
And you had mentioned it's this investment in relationship with this person
Yes.
and training and trying to make it work. And
Yes.
man, that's hard to hear.
Yeah.
Cori, let's switch gears to something more positive.
Okay, good.
What's the best part of your job? Like the thing that when you wake up in the morning, and I'm sure you're a positive person in the time that we've spent together, so I know that there's many things about which you're excited. But what's like man, I can't believe I get to do X.
The best parts of my job, I would say, are when I get to bring on new employees and kind of watch them grow throughout the process. You know, because you bring them on, I might meet them at a job fair, and you know, they come in, they're so excited when they get the job. You know, we get them through training. They're still excited. You can tell they're a little nervous, but I love to kind of see them come into their own, and once they have the job down, they are just, you know, they're owning it and they're going out and doing it and they're building relationships with their coworkers. I love to see at the events that we put on, I love to see people, you know, laughing and talking with their coworkers, you know, because that means that they're happy, they're engaged at work, they love what they're doing and they love the people they're doing it with. And that's the most rewarding, you know, when I can see them smile and laugh and talking to other people. I love when they come and say hi to me too as well. But sure. You know, I'd rather them, you know, kind of be with their own group and know that they're happy. So it's a really good, you know, way to see them go from one point to another. That's probably the best part, I would say.
It's neat because you're creating a community of folks that you're picking to be a part of it, right?
Yes.
Who are there then creating another community for
exactly.
your customer base. So, you know, one I think feeds the other, which is a beautiful thing. Cori, I want to take you back to the classroom in West.
Yes. Okay.
If there were one piece of advice that you could give yourself as a high school student, what would it be?
I think that my one piece of advice would be to really just get yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. You know, as I said, I was shy. You know, many people wouldn't necessarily believe it because I was a cheerleader in high school. So, but I needed to. In college, I needed to kind of get out of my shell a little bit. And I feel like once I did that, and once, you know, I joined the association, once I, you know, made new friends in college, you know, got yourself out, it really opens you up to being more open and available to do new things. You know, because I think sometimes we like to stick with what we're comfortable with. And, you know, coming out of high school, it can be a big scary thing because you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, how it's going to turn up. You know, the future is unknown at that point.
My father called it the curse of options.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just getting yourself out there and really talking to people, because I feel like I may not have done enough of that when I was in high school and I didn't take the opportunities to kind of speak to people and really figure out where I wanted to go. And I had to do a lot of that myself, which I did. But I think I would just say, you know, take those risks and do what you love and don't be afraid to speak up and, you know, put yourself out there.
Who do you admire in your field? Who's your HR role model?
My HR role model? Well, I know that probably a lot of people say this, but actually my mother was in human resources.
Oh, wow.
And another piece of this was I always told myself throughout my entire life I would never go into human resources because my mother was in it. And everyone always used to tell me, oh, you're so much like your mom. I'm like, no, I'm not. But now, as I've kind of learned about what she did all those years, you know, she's somebody that I can go to and I can talk to about these things, you know, because a lot of human resources is very confidential. So Sure. It's like, at least I have that person that I can, you know, vent to sometimes, because you do need to vent sometimes. But she's my role model just because she's gone all the way from being an HR assistant at a department store gimbals, which doesn't even exist. It didn't exist in my lifetime, all the way up to being the vice president of human resources at the Renfrew Center in Philadelphia, which is an eating disorder clinic.
Yeah.
So she worked her way up. She got to where she needed to go. She got her certifications. She got her degrees, all while still working and, being a great parent and being a, great daughter and a friend. And, I think she's really modeled how I would like my life to go.
It's so lovely.
Yeah, I know.
And it's a cool phase of your relationship now too, where you get to thought partner and
it's great. I get to go to conferences with her now and stuff like that. And I think it's good for her and it's good for me. But when I was in high school, I was like, nope, not happening. And sometimes I think we find that we're a little more similar to our parents sometimes than we'd like to think.
And the older we get, the smarter they get, right?
Exactly. I know. It's crazy, right?
It's incredible.
Yes.
Cori, we have high school folks watching us now, and I know that there are opportunities for them to get engaged with you and to either work or volunteer. I would be remiss if I brought you in and didn't highlight that opportunity for our kids. So can you speak to how those who are watching us right now can access Barclay Friends and what opportunities are available to them?
Sure. So there are lots of opportunities to kind of learn more about what Barclay Friends is about. There are volunteer opportunities, and you can come in and sit with the residents, help them with art projects, kind of dip your toes into whether or not you would want to work with that population, because, you have to really be passionate about it, which, I like to kind of ask students to think to their grandparents. Do you love being with your grandparents? Do you love that time with them? And from there, often if you do, then you probably would like being with someone else's grandparents.
Sure.
But there are those volunteer opportunities, and to do that, the students just need to contact Barclay Friends, and they'll be. It's easy. It really doesn't take much. In terms of employment and opportunities like that, as I said, we do have a lot of different avenues you could take in terms of careers in long-term care. Us ourselves, we're out at a lot of job fairs. We're out in the community. I'm always available if students have questions about what they need to do to get into this field. And us ourselves, we're going to be probably within a year and a half, we're going to be starting to do our own in-house certified nursing assistant classes.
Wow.
So we'll actually bring students in at little or no fee to them, teach them how to be a certified nursing assistant, and then from there, they can stick with us and work and make money while we give them tuition assistance to maybe if they want to become a registered nurse or a director of nursing or a future administrator. We offer that tuition assistance, and I'm the glowing example of how you can promote from within, and we love to do that in our organization.
It's a really innovative approach that you could potentially be like a high school junior or senior and work with you and get a CNA.
Yes.
And then within the company, continue to achieve certifications and advancement. That's really an innovative approach.
Yes, our director of nursing currently, she started out as a certified nursing assistant and has worked her way up in a relatively short amount of time. And now she's actually in a training program to become an administrator. And the administrators are right below the executive director in our building. So that's a great opportunity for her now, and that shows how far you can really go. All the while, to become a certified nursing assistant, it takes maybe a few months of classes. You take a test to get your certification, and then you're making money right away, even before you have a degree. And then from there, you can decide whether or not you want to go down that path to get a degree. So it's a good option for people who may not be sure, if they're college bound yet, or if they want to make some money and then go to college.
Right.
So that's a good option that I don't think a lot of people know about. But of course, there's also the option of getting your degree and then applying for a role with us in our administration office and, getting to director levels and everything like that if they want to, you know. Some people don't want to go all the way up and be a leader, which is fine. And you really have options in long-term care.
Not everyone ends up managing the ball club. Sometimes you stay in playing days for your entire career.
Exactly, and you know, I would be happy to talk to students if they have specific questions. You know, I can give you my contact information, and they could probably contact you. And I would talk to them directly. You know, it's a great opportunity to learn, and you know, even if they didn't end up coming to work at Barclay Friends, you know, I feel like it's worth it to look into the long-term care industry because it really is. It's a booming industry. It's only going to get bigger. The demand is there. And you know, right now we're even offering sign-on bonuses for CNAs, $2,000 sign-on bonuses. So that shows you how much of a good investment this career is because it's going to be there for a long, long time because we have a lot of people getting older, and they're always going to need care.
Right.
So.
And there's just a ton of demand in your field. And,
so much. Yes.
We're happy to be your partner in helping to supply it. So folks out there, please kindly reach out to me, reach out to Cori. Let's get a pathway going to funnel good folks, because you know the quality of student that comes out of Downingtown West.
Yes, excellent.
You know, you can certainly attest to it.
Yes.
Cori, I want to thank you so very much for being with us today. If you have any final thoughts for our students.
I guess what I'll just say is, you know, don't be afraid of what's coming. You know, you might be a little bit excited, you might know what you're doing, you may not know what you're doing, and that's okay. Just, you know, really think about what you want. Try to reflect within yourself, you know, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road? Take that time to really research every avenue, really find out what you're good at, what you love, and just as a person, just go for it. You know, don't be afraid. No matter what it is, no matter what your parents think or what your friends think, you know, really try to do what's best for you, and it'll ultimately work out for the best in the end. So.
Cori Leary, HR Director of Barclay Friends and proud Whippet.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.